This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 45 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, November 7th, 1908. I'll add commentary to elaborate on what was happening in Westford 114 years ago. The November 7th issue begins with the Westford Center section. The Westford housekeepers, who were so much interested and pleased with the series of cooking lessons held at the town hall recently, will be sorry to learn that the teacher, Miss Robinson, is ill in a hospital with typhoid fever. During the week she was not well, and upon going to Concord the next week for a series of lessons, was only able to do Monday's work when she gave out. She was a most capable demonstrator, and those who profited by her lessons here are sorry to learn of her illness. Our venerable and respected townsman, Charles L. Hildreth, who has been seriously sick the past week, is much improved, although still under the care of doctor and trained nurse. Heart weakness induced by over-fatigue was the cause of his illness. Alonzo H. Sutherland has bought the house on Boston Road owned by Mrs. Ida Cummings Allen of Ayer. Mr. Sutherland expects to move his family into the new house this month. Edwin N.C. Barnes of Boston gave an enjoyable song recital in the town hall on Monday evening. Mr. Barnes, who is supervisor of music in our public schools, was assisted by Gunnar A.G. Ekman, violinist, Miss Alice Dean Spaulding, reader, and Miss Sarah Horblett, accompanist. Mr. Barnes is thoroughly trained in his art and gave a varied and well-balanced program, among which were many favorites of music-loving people. Those assisting him in the recital fully sustained him in the popular program. Mr. and Mrs. L. Wells of Bakersfield, Vermont, are with their son, Dr. Orion V. Wells, for the winter, who is fitting up the home of the late Dr. Sleeper for occupancy. This is the large house at 29 Main Street that is just opposite the Graniteville Road intersection with Main Street. There's a World War I memorial on a pole on the street to Dr. Wells in front of this house. He died during the 1918 influenza epidemic and was a member of the State Guard at the time, I believe. The Edward M. Abbott Hose Company held its monthly drill and roll call Wednesday evening, after which a supper was served in charge of Leonard W. Wheeler, captain of the company. The Tadmuck Club held its usual pleasant meeting in Library Hall last week Thursday afternoon. The postponement to Thursday afternoon was made necessary on Mr. Marshall's account, for he was the speaker of the afternoon, and on Tuesday was one of the members of the council for installing Reverend P.G. Favor at Littleton. Mr. Marshall had, quote, current events, end quote, and he gave a group of most timely topics, giving many clear points on some difficult questions. This was particularly true of the political situation, outlining the views of the two candidates for president, William Howard Taft, the Republican who won, and William Jennings Bryan, the Democrat, as to what constitutes the duties of the president. Other topics were some of the problems of the Far East, the revolution of postal facilities, the recent Olympic Games in London, and recent progress in serial navigation. The London Games were supposed to be held in Rome, but Mount Vesuvius erupted on April 7, 1906, devastating Naples, and funds set aside for the Olympics in Italy were diverted to rebuilding Naples. The closing ceremony was held October 31, 1908, in London. Miss Clara Smith contributed to the afternoon's enjoyment with selected readings, giving one of Josephine Dodge Dackham's inimitable studies of child life entitled, quote, Dickie and the Little God, end quote, balancing it with the gem of poetry, quote, The Petrified Fern, end quote. American author Josephine Dodge Daskam Bacon, born in 1876, died in 1961, wrote a series of juvenile mysteries having female protagonists. She also wrote on women's issues and women's roles. The club has almost reached in membership its limit of 75. We'll find later that the Tadmont Club raised their limit of membership to 100, and I think they actually had a little over 100 members at one point. The next section is called Lecture. It rained last week Thursday evening for the first in the series of lectures and entertainments of the Grange Lyceum course, but rain is so welcome a factor these days that it did not deter a good-sized audience from assembling to hear the Honorable Arthur K. Peck in his splendid lecture, quote, "Storm Heroes of Our Coast," end quote. Mr. Peck is not a stranger to a Westford audience. He lectured here most acceptably in a former course on a different subject, but his lecture Thursday evening is considered one of his best. He portrayed with vivid description, aided with a set of views, the beauty of the sea and the lives of the brave men engaged in the life-saving service. He gave his inland hearers a realizing sense of what a great storm may mean along the coast, and gave many views of the results of the Storm King's fury. This Arthur K. Peck of Boston was a very popular lecturer on the Chautauqua circuit in his day. A 1909 poster indicated he was in his 10th season of lectures and had given over 600 lectures in Boston and surrounding area. The poster includes the lecture mentioned here and 5 others, mostly dealing with national parks in the Rocky Mountains. His wife, Minna Elliott Tenney Peck, was born in Littleton, Mass., and she was also a renowned lecturer. The services at the Congregational Church last Sunday morning and evening were of a special interest. The church was prettily decorated for the morning service with oak branches and chrysanthemums, and on the pulpit was a vase with a spray of crimson rambler roses that had blossomed at the Atwood Gardens as though it were June. The Atwood sisters lived at 4 Graniteville Road in Westford Center, just down from the center. Mr. Marshall's message to his hearers was a wise and tactful plea for the putting of equal zeal into the interests of the church that we put into other activities. At the close of the sermon, the communion service was observed. In the evening service, Reverend D. Frank Atherton, who was a classmate of Mr. Marshall at Andover, was present and told of the work of the Morgan Memorial Chapel in the south end of Boston. While this work was not new to some in town, it was to many, and Mr. Atherton gave a most comprehensive outline of the benevolences, industries, and evangelism built up from the things we waste, men, women, and children helped from poverty, degradation, and sin through the instrumentality of the old clothes sent them. The number of bags already held by the townspeople was added to, and more left in case others wished to help. Morgan Memorial was started by Edgar J. Helms in 1917. He also created Goodwill Industries that were kind of headquartered in this church in Boston, hence the donation of the bags of clothing. The next section is the About Town section. The recent rain that deposited so much for the earth will have to renew it, as grass fires still claim the right to do haying even on the Sabbath day. 2 such fires started last Sunday, one on the line of the Stony Brook Railroad near Willard Fletcher Bridge, the other starting a little later and nearer Brookside on land of S.L. Taylor and George C. Moore. This set a bad example, and the following day another fire started on land of James H. O'Brien and John Flynn. The acreage just thus treated was not large, but enough to demonstrate what a dry place the Brookside precinct is compared with some other attractive moist places. The fire seemed to be caused by sparks from a passing locomotive. CRP Decatur has been busy for several weeks enlarging his cellar. This means more room for more vegetables and fruit, and any Yankee can guess what this means. Aside from this extensive shingling, repairs are being done at this old historic farm homestead, marked by the DAR as the home of Pelatiah Fletcher. This was 54 Lowell Road, and that beautiful old home is still there. It says it's the home of Pelatiah Fletcher of ye ancient revolutionary long ago. Captain Pelatiah Fletcher, I believe, served in the Revolutionary War from Westford. The new house of Michael McGlinchey on the site of the one burned nearly a year ago is nearly completed and contains 2 rooms and other improvements as an attractive feature over the dimensions of the old one. The work is being done by Martin O'Neill of North Chelmsford. The Republican rally last week, Friday evening at Healy's Hall, Graniteville, had the shining stars and the light of a promising moon to encourage a full hall. The Honorable Herbert E. Fletcher, chairman of the town committee, called to order and delivered an introductory speech which laid the foundation for other speakers to build on. It was a good, solid tariff foundation. He introduced Abile J. Abbott as the presiding officer, who gave a clear and concise review of the tariff question. He was followed by Alonzo G. Walsh of Lowell. The truant band of North Chelmsford added much to the jingle of the occasion. The vote at Tuesday's election was as follows. For President, Taft, 261, Bryan, 91, Hiskau, Hisgeu, 17. For Governor, Draper, 222, Vahey, 115. Representative to Congress, Tyrrell, 196, Mitchell, 125. State Representative, Stone, 212, Smith, 75. Next section is the Graniteville section. The members of the Holy Name Society of St. Catherine's Church participated in the Great Parade in Boston last Sunday as part of Division 12 of Lowell. The Lowell Division was somewhat late in getting to Boston, but nevertheless covered the entire route of parade and was reviewed by Archbishop O'Connell and the Chief Marshal. This was quite a parade, and the Boston Daily Globe of November 2nd had a nice write-up, so the following is taken from that. On November 1st, 1908, 39,000 members of the Holy Name Societies from throughout the greater Boston area marched in a large parade in celebration of the centenary of the founding of the Boston Diocese. An estimated 275,000 spectators watched the men and boys march. They practiced for weeks preceding the parade and marched in precision to the beat of some 80 bands, numbering 5,000 musicians. It took 4 hours and 40 minutes for the parade to pass. A reviewing stand erected in a vacant lot next to Archbishop William H. O'Connell's house on Bay Street Road at the corner of Granby Street held the Archbishop, James Cardinal Gibbons, Boston Mayor George A. Hibbard, and other dignitaries. A group of laymen presented the Archbishop with a new automobile at the completion of the parade. Quote, Boston has never seen a more striking nor significant spectacle than the great parade yesterday of the Holy Name Society. Those who saw that impressive column will remember it all their lives, end quote. That was a quote from the Boston Globe article. Election Day dawned bright and pleasant here in Graniteville, and out of a possible 120 votes in Precinct 2, which comprises this village, 103 votes were cast. That's an 86% turnout. That's quite good. The next paragraph is called Death. J. Alfred Gagnon, a respected resident of this village, died at his home here last week Friday morning after a lingering illness, aged 47 years. He leaves a father and mother, a wife, 2 sons, and 7 daughters, all of this village. The Gagnon family moved here from Westfield some few years ago and have made many friends during their stay here. The sympathy of the village people is extended to the bereaved family in their affliction. The next section is the Forge Village section. The Young Ladies of St. Mary's Guild held a Halloween party at Recreation Hall, which was largely attended. Music for dancing was furnished by Miss Sarah Precious and James Brown. Refreshments were served, and quite a sum was realized for the benefit of St. Andrew's Mission. Jack Welch, well known in this village, sailed for Ireland last week and will spend the winter at his boyhood home in County Cork. He is taking a much-needed rest for he has been in the employ of the Gage Ice Company for a number of years and has taken very few days vacation, and now feels that he has earned this one by his strict adherence to duty. Mrs. Rich of Finsmere Farm was in town last week Friday to remove her furniture to Boston, where she is located for the winter. Finsmere Farm was on the south side of West Prescott Street, right on the straddling the Groton line. I think 6 acres were in Westford and about the same in Groton. Mrs. Venn and family arrived on the Cymric last week and will make their home here, where she has a sister who has been here for some months. They came from Keighley, England. The election of Taft for president was celebrated in this village Wednesday evening by a torchlight procession headed by the wooden band of Ye Olden Time. Old and young all joined in having a good time. Many of the houses were handsomely decorated and lighted. Everyone seemed to enter into the spirit of the occasion, and goodwill and order were clearly manifest. The Festival of All Saints was appropriately observed at St. Andrew's Mission last Sunday. Decorations of the fruits of the earth's harvest and singing of the complete harvest cantata by the full vested choirs of Ayer and this village emphasized the memorial. There was a very large attendance present, and the brief but impressive remarks of the pastor and the special music will carry their impress in the hearts of the people. There were a number of different harvest cantatas. I'm guessing that this one might have been Opus 58 by the German composer Karl Maria von Weber, which was written in 1818. That's the news in Westford for the week ending November 7th, 1908. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of Westford Cat for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Westford Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org, or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.